Good evening. My name is Andrew Capilati with Boylston Properties. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. I want to welcome you to our first community meeting for Building G. Several of you have been in the room in the past as we've discussed G in a couple of different scenarios. The last scenario as a taller residential building. Tonight we're going to discuss a change in use for Building G from residential condominiums to life sciences. I want to recognize a few people who are here with me tonight. Adam Gross from Ayers St. Gross is our architectural firm. Bill McQuillan is here in the room. Mark DeShanes from Boylston Properties. Justin McEachern. Steve Woods with our Carol Johnson, our landscape architectural firm. Laura Courtney from PCA. Eric Brown with PCA, and I'm sure I've missed a couple of other people. I apologize. I'd like to give a brief introduction or update on construction activity. As I think many of you have seen, the parking garage is currently being erected. That garage will be completely up and erected in March and open in June. Building E, which I've received a few compliments on, is the building at the end of the Home Depot building. We're going to turn that building over in February to Majestic Cinemas and CityWorks, the first two tenants who are going to start their fit out. And then we are in the middle of getting ready to begin the complete demolition, interior demolition of the building that you're sitting in now. As a matter of fact, this is our last community meeting in this space. So I'd like to ask for a moment of silence. Up above us, the second floor of A has been converted, as you know, to life sciences, and we were pleased to announce a couple of weeks ago that we signed Squeeze, a company already operating here in Watertown, in 20,000 feet to a lease of 63,000 feet. That work is getting ready to begin, and we will hopefully have them in this building by the end of this calendar year. So as an update on a couple of other leases, I talked about Majestic Cinema. You know about Roach Brothers, CityWorks, Ulta Cosmetics, PokeWorks, Santander Bank, Shake Shack, Gap, Old Navy, and Chipotle. Gap and Old Navy will be back in this building within the next, I think, 12 months, and Chipotle will be taking new space in the first floor of the B garage. Again, when we turn that space open turn that space over in June, and then finally Condesa, small restaurant. That roughly represents about 150,000 square feet of signed retail leases. So that represents about 60% of the total 250,000 square feet. So we are collectively quite pleased with the progress that we've made to date. That doesn't mean that there isn't still a lot left to do, but the guys at Wilder and the rest of the team have worked very hard to get us to this point, and hopefully you're starting to see the results of those efforts. We will go through a series of slides. Why life sciences? Adam will give a little bit of an introduction on Ayers St. Gross. We'll talk about the proposed design for the building. Steve will talk about the landscape plan and access. We'll look at some floor plans and then some renderings. And as always, we will take questions. You guys have seen these slides before. Sort of constrained by my microphone, unfortunately. This is the first slide from the Watertown Strategic Framework, the Economic Development Plan in 2011. You know, we showed you these slides. I think everybody in the room is familiar with them. Want to point out a couple of key points here. That Watertown wants to be known as a desired address for innovative economic clusters such as life sciences. And I think that you're starting to see with the Lynx building across the street, Squeeze moving in upstairs here, that the things that were important in 2011 in this economic development plan are starting to take shape. The updated 2015 plan talked about the Arsenal Street corridor, and recognizing that this corridor is a source for much of the employment base in Watertown, and it's important for the town to maintain the focus in this corridor on those employment activities. Watertown's employment by 2015 had more than doubled since 2001. However, that was behind other communities, Belmont, certainly Cambridge, Lexington, Belmont, other communities that have aggressively pursued life sciences. So why are we changing G to a life science use? As I talked about, Watertown is rapidly becoming a destination for life science jobs. In the past 12 months, almost 300,000 square feet and 800 jobs have been created. We talked about the Watertown Economic Development Plan. The G building at 130 feet in the configuration of 94 feet wide by 170 feet long didn't make economic sense for us to do it as a residential building. It is too wide as a residential building. What we talked about in June, July, and August of last year was about getting the width of that building correct, roughly 70 feet, which is what is the correct width for multifamily, and extruding the height up, not asking for any more gross square footage, but getting G to a footprint that made sense economically for us to develop. And subsequently, in the past 6 or 8 months, as the construction market has changed and costs become even higher, things are much more expensive to produce. The economics on G just unfortunately continued to erode. The other opportunity here, adding approximately 150,000 square feet in G to the already approved 107,000 square feet upstairs, get from a management and an operational standpoint and a flexibility standpoint, provides a variety of different sizes and opportunities for lab tenants. What Squeeze is doing down the street in 20,000 feet, they are staying in Watertown, but they needed to expand to 63,000 feet. Being able to bring a variety of different tenants in and having some different floor plates gives us and the life sciences tenants flexibility.
Could you just take that plan? You and me and a bunch of people are very familiar with A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Just a quick reminder for everyone, where's who and who's where, et cetera, because you keep talking about G and not everyone is as familiar.
That's a good point. So this is what we are referring to as the A building. This is Marshall's. We are approximately here in this building, in the back of the building. This is the B garage that you see being constructed. The first sort of section, 4 stories tall, is down here. That is a hotel. C is an apartment building with first floor retail. D is an apartment building with first floor retail. E is this end, or the west end of the Home Depot building. The cinema will be here. City Works will be in this corner, and then there are 2 to be determined retail spaces. The most prominent one being on this corner. I think you see those big glass windows when you drive down Arsenal Street. They were look quite good tonight, all lit up. We have the F garage with F residential on top. Roach Brothers is located in here, and this is the G building. This picture shows it as a 130-foot high residential building, and we will show you some of the differences here in a minute.
Are you sure that's 130? That looks like 197 to me.
I think that's the 130. No, that's 130.
Okay. As you can tell, we didn't practice.
As we talked about, the smaller floor plates in G, anywhere between 17 and 20,000 feet, provide opportunity and flexibility for the smaller lab tenants. 16,000 square foot plate, we could probably have up to 2 tenants, each taking approximately 8,000 square feet. You go to Cambridge, you go to some of these other buildings where the footprint of the building is 40, 50, and 60,000 square feet. No one wants to rent No one wants to cut that building up. It just doesn't make sense operationally, the cores and elevators. So here you're getting the second generation sort of lab tenants who have who hopefully are going to become 100,000 square foot users as their science improves. Real estate tax impact, the lab is approximately going to generate 2 times the tax revenue for the town that the condominium building would. Reduction in overall developed square footage. We have approximately 188,000 gross square feet that were approved in the master plan special permit for G. This building is going to be about 155,000 square feet. That's a 33,000 square foot reduction in the overall developed square footage. About 18% decrease. We think we know that leads to fewer water and sewer impacts, as well as when you convert the upstairs of A from office to lab, and you convert G from residential to life sciences, the peak car trips in the morning drop by about 60 trips. And we've got to get some preliminary data together with Manas, our traffic engineer, who has actually been studying the traffic patterns over at Lynx. We have 119,000 square feet occupied over there, so we have a very good and accurate count on the number of people that are taking the shuttle, the number of people that are riding their bike, and the number of people that are driving. Just anecdotally, I think that right now, today, about a dozen people are still taking their bicycles to work every day. Those are the hardy souls. That number probably doubles in the warmer weather. And we have about 45 people riding the shuttle. So that represents, there are in 119,000 square feet, there are about 400 employees. That's 17 or 18% of them are taking alternative means of transportation. Life science activity in Watertown, about 600,000 feet in the last 20 years, 23 companies, 1,500 people, economic development. Diversifies the tax base, adds a whole bunch of different people who are out providing economic stimulus everywhere. And important to note that the surrounding communities, Alston, Brighton, Waltham, Newton, West Cambridge, everybody is looking to attract life science businesses, life science small companies, young kids, bright kids, kids with high-paying jobs, and we collectively together are in competition for those jobs with those other communities. And now I'd like to turn it over to Adam, who will run you through the architecture.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Hi. Hi. How are you? So thanks for coming out on a very cold night. Hopefully you'll see through a little introduction I'm going to do about our company that we, you have a question? Oh, sorry. That we love to work in communities, and we love the feedback that we get in our projects from communities. So again, thanks for coming, and I mean that very sincerely. So I'm going to do a quick intro to our firm. Our mission statement, which we spend a lot of time wordsmithing, is that we try to engage people and places to create designs that enrich the world. So we're typically working for mission-driven clients. We do a lot of work for colleges and universities, and when we work for developers, it's typically working with developers who have a program for their building, so not just a purely speculative building, but a building like, in this case, a life sciences building. We're about 200 people and design professionals versus architects. So we have architects, people trained as landscape architects, planners, graphic designers, space analytics folks. We have 3 major offices around the country. We have a small office here in Boston, but I'm headquartered in Baltimore, Maryland. The Grecian formula is starting to wear off a little bit, but we've been around a long time. So we go back to 1910, so our firm has a pretty good, strong foundation in history. We're also very proud to be an employee-owned company, so that really means that the last people who leave our offices are turning the lights out every night and taking full responsibility for the projects that they're involved in. We also have, as you'll see, a history of a fair number of projects in New England, and New England is where I'm from, and I'm just finishing building a house in Rhode Island, so I'm close by. So this is just a list of our urban and mixed-use planning and architecture. So we do a lot of both at the same time. And this drawing is a little project just down the street from here. So about was sharing with David, I think around 2003, we were hired by Harvard University to develop the master plan for the Alston campus. So kind of the extension of Arsenal that turns into Western and North Harvard. Here's Harvard Yard, and the river houses, the bridge coming down into the city, into Alston, and then the football stadium here. And these red buildings are on the 250 acres that Harvard acquired over time. And we had many, many meetings similar to this with the Alston neighborhood, listening to them, trying to adjust this plan to meet concerns that they had. And now this plan was then approved by the Boston Redevelopment Authority and is now very much being implemented. And includes this idea of trying to create an innovation district, or an ecosystem is the term, that kind of phrase that's used around the country, that is mixed use. So we've been at this for quite a while in terms of the innovation district. Oh, Andrew's clicking. Work, and are currently working right now on this project, which is really about the things that Andrew just said. It's about job creation, it's about economic development, and it's job creation not just for people trained as lab technicians, but it's job creation for admin folks, for the people who are taking care of the building, et cetera. So this is about a 200,000 square foot building that we're just about completed in Providence, Rhode Island. This is where the I-95 used to go right through that part of Providence and cut off the old jewelry district from downtown Providence. They brilliantly were able to build a new bridge and take that piece of I-95 down. It created this brownfield site. And this building is looking out across a park to the river, and it's organized around the three tenants that are going to be in the building. So these floors will be the Cambridge Innovation Center, which is a startup company that started in Kendall Square, that is now working all around the country, creating space for young companies to come in and commercialize ideas, typically from the neighboring university, in this case Brown. Brown University is going to take these upper two floors, and then Johnson & Johnson, their innovation group is moving from New Jersey. They looked at Boston and they looked in Kendall Square and they said the rents are too darn high, so they have come to Providence and they're going to be moving into the top two floors. And you'll see here elements that we're going to be looking at in some of these early drawings that we've done for building G, in terms of the balconies, in terms of stepping the building back, in terms of dealing with what in a life sciences building is a reality, which is the mechanical penthouse, and really trying to blend it into the context. And scale the building down to public spaces that are going to be created by this building and a new hotel that's being built just to the right of this image. So just a few other projects, just to give you a sense of the scale of work that we do and the type of work, and also kind of how we look at design. So this is a new life sciences building at Johns Hopkins University. It's a combination of brick and glass. And when you enter into the Johns Hopkins campus, you come from downtown and up a long street. And so we created this corner element to really cap that view, that long view, and then organize the facade so it kind of points you in the direction of the main hospital and the rest of the Hopkins campus. And then this big bay window, this is an oncology clinic as a part of this building. The bay window is for the patients' families who are waiting while people are getting chemo. So there's a lot of elements that went in that are prescribed by the use that went into the design of the building. So this building is kind of a contextual building in the neighborhood. The next one is more of a building in the round, and we're going to be looking tonight at a building that's predominantly glass. And we know when there's glass, there are a lot of issues. There's issues of energy, there's issues of bird strikes, there's issues of reflectivity. And this is a new law school building, and it deals with all those issues. But it's a LEED Platinum building, so it's an incredibly high-performing, energy-efficient building, while also incorporating, again, some of the elements we're going to be looking at for this site, which is trying to break the mass of the building down, stepping the building back, creating outdoor balconies, kind of humanizing the scale of the building. And
Where is it?
So this is the University of Baltimore Law School. This next slide is in Arizona. We've done a lot of work for both Arizona State and University of Arizona. This is actually a joint project, again, a life sciences building for both those schools, and uses here, not anything we're suggesting for Watertown, but uses copper as an indigenous material in Arizona to try to pick up the natural materials that are in the surrounding landscape. But again, it's a predominantly glass building, predominantly transparent, with a very public ground floor. So I'm going to ask Steve, what's join me? Go ahead, Andrew. So I just wanted to start with the work that you guys have already done. And when Andrew sent us these design guidelines a few weeks ago, and I was flipping through them, and I immediately hit copy, send, and sent them to our entire planning group and our entire landscape architecture group and a few other people that are involved in planning. And I said, these guidelines are really good. And this is one of the, when we do planning projects, we do a lot of design guidelines. It's really one of the hardest things to do well, to do design guidelines that people can kind of understand and respond to. So I sent this around to my colleagues, and I got back like 5 or 6 emails within like an hour saying, these are awesome, you know, these are a great model, these are so good for you all for doing these guidelines, and we take them very seriously. The last, pardon me?
David Gamble.
Yeah, well, I met David tonight for the first time. I'm not trying to butter him up, but I mean, it's again.
It's working.
I can show you the emails. I can show you the emails. So this is the last page in the guidelines, but it's kind of this kit of parts for how to make a good city. So it's not like one of these things is important when you're doing good building, it really is all of them. And so I just pulled out a couple of images because again, these relate to things that we were already thinking about in the building. One, this is about public realm interface. So basically, how does the building hit the ground? How does it interact with the landscape? In this case, we have this incredible site with beautiful kind of little remnant woodland and the river. So how do we deal with that as a part of our context? It's not really an urban site, it's more of a building in a park, but it does still want to hit the ground and have good public spaces. The other is building massing. So we will be showing you a building scheme here that steps back and that kind of tries to, again, take advantage of the views and vistas by building balconies into the building, which also has the ability to break the mass of the building down, so it's not a big box. And then precedents. So we have looked at lots and lots of precedents that we've shared with Andrew, Bill, and the team. We are leaning towards a more transparent building, a more glassy building. So we were glad to see throughout the guidelines examples that were more contemporary and look in character, that did use a lot of glass and also use shading devices on the building. So these are, again, great to work from, and we look forward to the dialogue with the city as we go forward, make sure we're taking all these seriously. So here's the site. So Andrew just walked you through the building that we're sitting in, Building A, where the new lab tenant will be coming in, and then Building F, which is a garage where the grocery store will go, and then parking, and then a residential above. So that project I showed you in Providence, this innovation district in the old jewelry district that Brown is going to be the major tenant in, is one of 16 innovation district projects we're working on around the country in 16 different cities, ranging from University of Southern California and Los Angeles to Wake Forest to the Raleigh-Durham area. And the secret sauce in almost all of the successful innovation districts is that they are not single use. So not like a research park where you just have a bunch of research buildings. They're mixed use. They have lots of retail, they have lots of housing, they have other amenities, entertainment, et cetera. So if you were going to pick a place that would attract a life science company, these life science companies don't want to be in a sterile office park. They want to be in a vibrant ecosystem, which is why we're so excited about this project, is not just the site and the river and the trees, but the fact that it ties into what really is going to be a great new neighborhood at Arsenal Yards. So our site is, as Andrew said, it's little. It's a fairly small site, and we've taken advantage of that site, I think, in many ways, starting with the landscape. So, next. So, Steve, let me let you walk through some of our landscape ideas.
Thanks, Adam. And hey, everybody. I like what Adam said about the building being in the park, because it really is one of the buildings in the spaces that really sets itself in the existing park and the existing landscape that's there. And as far as landscape architecture goes and the design that we're working with here, it's all about making sure we have appropriate accessible movement, pedestrian movement in and around the space. That people were able to recognize how to move around the building, move through the building, and that the building fits and sits itself well within the space. So this initial concept design is looking at finding the avenues to create accessible movement from Arsenal Yards down, specifically from the developing Arsenal Park, which is in flux and changing, but it has a really good direction to it. There's a challenge of movement between the finished floor of the building and down to Greeno, which is about 22 feet in grade change, in a pretty tight area. So that's trying to figure out how to make movement feel correct and appropriate between those two elevations. And then continued movement and greenscape movement down and around Home Depot and around, so that the actual user of the park has the ability to move down to Greeno and continue movement through the park. In this slide, you can see appropriate or potential connections from the building to the park. An entryway that happens on the west side of the building. There's a connection of paths and stairs that make their way down to Greeno. They can go to the next slide, it's a little closer view of that. Actually, no, go back, sorry. That connection is using a combination of stair sections.
Go forward too. Let me go back. Go forward. There you go.
All right. That connection from Greeno is using a combination of stair sections. There's also a very curved, sinuous path that it's a sloped walk. There aren't any handrails associated with it. It's under 5% grade, so that movement allows people on bikes to make their way up and through the space, and also provide accessible movement from Greeno all the way up, accomplishing that 22 feet of grade change. Throughout that space, we've been working and reviewed with the Concom to make sure that we're impacting the space appropriately, but also providing requisite improvements to the space through planting and greenscape, so that the movement is through a more naturalized system and not a kind of clear cut and barren landscape. The landscape design also looks to provide some building directed amenity space that looks out into the green space, and also a building directed drop off that goes towards the front of the space.
Yeah, so what I think is really quite beautiful about what Steve's done is knitted in this new proposed kind of switchback ramping system and step system that gets down to the river to potential boat dock with the park design that was already in place. And so you can start to really imagine in this drawing, if someone comes out of a restaurant or another researcher who wants to go see someone in this building, that they can move through these landscape spaces and kind of tie into the new life sciences building, which would have two entrances. So it would have one on this west side facing the park, and another one which would be where the car drop off is, or Uber drop off and pickup is, on the east face of the building. We are looking at and proposing as a part of the building parking below, one level of parking below the building. And that parking would be accessed by the ramp in the F building. You'd go down that ramp and then turn in and come into a parking level, which is this simple layout. And we are also looking at what's called an offset core. So most office or research buildings are big rectangular boxes, and the elevators and stairs are in the middle. Because our footprint is so narrow, we're pushing the elevator cores to the north. So it allows us to incorporate the tie into the core in a place that allows the garage to work, but also makes the upper floors of the building very open, as you'll see in a minute. So keep going up. So this is the main entrance level. And life sciences buildings have a lot of unusual back of the house needs, so storage, et cetera. We're keeping all the trash within the building. So we're having one loading bay that you see here. We have a bike storage area here, but the rest of this is really mechanical support for the building. But we've done that in as efficient as possibly, so we can really maintain a very glassy, open, common lobby space that is yet to be programmed, but that could potentially have a small cafe in it. It would be a social space, very similar to Lynx, if you've been into the main floor of Lynx, which has ping pong tables and kind of social spaces. We're also setting the building back a little bit right here to create a small outdoor area, so you could imagine these glass doors being opened up in a kind of terrace area here, and you can start to see then the pathway that Steve's designed that links down to the river. So the second and third floors look like this. So you can see that offset core. It's not dead center in the middle of the building. And at these two floors, we're actually proposing to kind of connect the building to the garage. So there would be a passageway underneath that could be programmed, and it would be open to pedestrians to move through. And then in the second and third floors, we'd be able to gain some really useful square footage for the future tenants. And then the typical floors that run above that 7 floors of this floor plan. You can see again where this offset core really makes sense. So you can imagine if you get off the elevators here or off the stair, you're going to walk into a space that is primarily column-free because of the spans are just not that big, because the floor plate's not that big. And you'll be looking out, towards the river, towards the Mass Pike, and across to the skyline in the distance. Some of the shapes that you start seeing here in the floor plan, some of these areas that are carved out, relate to ways, again, we're trying to break down the scale of the building and introduce some balconies and outdoor spaces. So those are the floor plans. This shows the section. So this again ties back to the guidelines. We're showing the uppermost floor setback. So the approved, you'll see in a second, the approved residential project, which was this footprint. So that was what was approved previously. Is one fairly consistent volume, and the height of this approved height was 129 feet. And then there's a penthouse shown here. So we are going up, in this sketch anyway, just one more foot than that. So we are keeping it at 130 feet. But then we're also stepping back in certain areas of the building and having a partial floor up here, which takes leasable area away from Bill and his colleagues, but we think really makes a better building and creates some really great outdoor terraces. So we have a kind of 116-foot datum that runs around pretty much the south face of the building that faces into the park, and the west face that looks towards the city park. So this size, it steps down, you can see here, and steps back, and relates to this park. And then on the north side, it kind of steps up a little bit. And a lot of that stepping up is to incorporate and kind of hide the mechanical penthouse, but also relate to the views towards downtown Boston. So this is kind of a more urban scale facade, and this is we're trying to step this down more to the scale of the rest of the Arsenal Mall. So this was the approved 130-foot high residential building. And you see it did a lot of the same things, but it didn't have the kind of balconies that we're looking at. But this was the penthouse that was out proud at the face of the building. But it did a lot of nice things in trying to break down the scale. And we're trying to do the same thing, but we're trying to do it in a much more transparent, kind of reflective building. So this shows our heights of our building in comparison to the previously approved residential building. And then that red line you can see here in the next slide this is the rendering of our building. And if you go one more, you can just see this without the red line, it's probably easier. So the north face of the building that faces the residential project on building F, excuse me, we're looking at that being more masonry and kind of punched windows. So when you see that north facing side, it would be more of a residential scale that relates to the new residences that are planned here, and then it turns the corner and becomes pretty much all glass with this slot that clearly indicates the entrance and kind of opens it up to the park. So that's where the entrance to the building is, and we also are alternating every other floor on this west-facing side, a series of balconies. And then at the roof of the building, that's where we're stepping back the building about 15 feet up to our 130-foot height, but the parapet here would be more down at around that 115-foot height. So we're trying to step down that corner, both to create outdoor spaces for the tenants, but also just to scale the building down a little bit on the west side. And then this is the proposed massing and elevation on the east side. So you see how the base of the building would relate to that drop-off that Steve's laid out. You come into the main lobby here, and then these are balconies that alternate from the other side. So basically every floor has a balcony either facing east or facing west. But these would have great views of the downtown Boston skyline. And then the element at the top is really shaped and sculpted both to kind of elegantly hit the sky, but also to house the penthouse, to kind of hide the mechanical penthouse. So if you compare the two, you can see that the floor-to-floor heights on the housing are obviously much smaller in a residence than in a life sciences building. You just need more head height for your ductwork and because it's a different type of space. So the proposed residential building was 12 individual floors, but much lower floor-to-floors. that was 129 feet to the roof and a total of 188,000 square feet. And this relates to Andrew's points about water usage and traffic, et cetera, as compared to what we're presenting to you tonight, which is somewhere between 8 and 9 stories. We're still looking at our floor-to-floor heights, but we think it would be no less than 8 and no more than 9 individual floors, again, depending on the floor-to-floor heights. 130 feet to our roof as we're currently looking at it, and about 140,000 square feet. So that's the end of our formal presentation, and we'd love to hear questions, comments, concerns.
Why don't we, typically what we've done in the past is we'll start out here to the left, and we will work our way across the room. Everyone will get a chance to ask a question. So starting over here.
Or you can just tell us you think it looks
It
great.
was such a great presentation, there isn't a question. I'm quickly gonna get to Elodia, who will have a question.
Of course.
So as I'm working my way, Elodia?
Two questions. One is for Bill, who's talking, so I can't ask it. Bill, on my wish list, I'm still hoping for a restaurant on the roof of that building. Really, just putting it out there. And my question for you, Adam, having been well tutored by David Gamble in terms of connections between the land and the building, I'm a little, wondering a little bit about the connection to the park. And I'm not criticizing Steve's landscaping at all, but there's a mass of trees, but it's almost like that connection is hidden behind the trees and looking at this. And David talked a lot about how you activate spaces, and we already are facing that long brick wall on building A, which again, I was hoping would be busted open with some wonderful restaurant. But if you look over here, and when I looked at the plan in the online thing, it was 12.5 feet from the edge of the building to the park. And I guess I'm hoping for some drama in connection with the park, whether it's a sculpture or, again, I love the little deck that you have out on the that side, the south side. But couldn't we open that up a little bit more to the park on that west side?
Yep.
Because the activity thing is kind of critical. And it's also safe, too.
Yep.
It makes it safer.
Some of the more interesting life science buildings in Kendall Square take the science that's going on in the buildings and turn it into art, and have, you know, displays and murals and things that change, you know, maybe like behind a glass panel. So I think incorporating art would be fantastic. Maybe some permanent sculpture out here I think would be wonderful. I do think this whole corner will be the more public side of the public lobby, and with much more transparency and doors and windows that could open out. This is more the formal entrance to the building. So I think there's a lot that certainly could be incorporated here. We also have pretty consciously located the bike storage here, which we'd see as being transparent, so hanging bikes, and so you'd see that in there as well. So we're trying, well, we have a lot of back of the house stuff, we're trying to still activate this more public side of the building.
And if I could, Adam. I think, Elodia, one of the things you're probably referring to are these trees here. And these are the trees, I think, that are currently shown on CDM's plan. And we'll continue to express our willingness to work with CDM and the town and Conscom on what this part of the park looks like that close to the building. You are right, it is 12.5 feet, which is our setback from the property line. And there is a grade change going on in here. So I think what we are representing on this plan is currently what CDM is showing on the town plan, but that doesn't mean that there isn't opportunity for improvement.
Better connectivity.
Better connectivity.
Thank you, Andrew.
Bob?
You call this a building in the park. That area is the last remaining natural area on the Charles. It seems to me you have an obligation that your building may not be as intrusive on the Charles River side, may not be as noticeable. I don't know how you do that in 12 stories. IMPA kind of did it at Copley Square. I think you got quite a challenge where this building becomes too aggressive, too pronounced, too visual, and somehow can be warm to that spot. And that's our last natural area on that Charles. Now we realize we're losing a lot by the building just being there. A lot of us aren't big on that, but that's the reality.
You say IMPA, you mean Hancock Tower, not the Christian Science.
Right, the
Yeah,
Hancock
Hancock
Tower,
Tower,
the other one. And the other thing is this meandering path is all new. One of the concerns with the earlier path was how many trees it was taking up. This is bigger, more intrusive, looks like it takes up
Actually,
even more
Bob,
trees.
I believe this is 500 square feet, 400 square feet less?
Yeah, it's actually a bit less in
The
the.
pathway?
The pathway, yes,
We-
by,
we-
go ahead.
Yeah, we made adjustments to the actual alignment of the path to move more of it outside the 200-foot buffer, and shifting it up the right-hand side. The actual length of the path is the same, but we had, in the original design, it was more of like a zigzag path.
Right.
It was condensed and didn't allow for as much green space between the hardscape. And we noticed that it didn't connect with the movement that was natural in the park itself.
One of the
Do
nice
you think
things
it's
that I
taking
think-
out less trees than the earlier?
It has less impact in the open space than.
You might demonstrate it next time by showing Bill's scheme.
It's good. Another little addition on the pathway system is to pick up pedestrian movement coming basically out of the Home Depot lot. So this little ramp here is a new piece of the puzzle as well that would then take you down in a handicap accessible way.
I have a
Yes.
question that actually follows up on that. I'm wondering with such a large glass building and an industry that tends to work very long hours, how lights and light pollution is going to impact that view along the Charles from across the river and at night, and then also how it's gonna impact the residential building that's gonna be right next to it.
Yeah, great questions, thanks. So let me answer the second one first, because I can answer that one, and the other one I think we really need to take to heart and to study more in terms of how to deal with the issues you raised about light pollution glass. But on the face that is facing the residential, it would be not be all glass, it would be a masonry with kind of vertical residential scale windows. So that, and I think the lighting of those windows can also be controlled, through the tenancy. That building I showed at University of Baltimore, that's a LEED Platinum building I mentioned, has fritting in the different types of fritting in the glass, and so at night it kind of softens the amount of light that's coming out of the building. It's much more of a softer glow than a bright, glary glass. But I think, we're not really even in schematic design yet, so I think these are all great questions and things we need to take a hard look at and study.
I have two different set of questions. One of them is referring to the path he was talking about, the back. I think in the previous design, it was 12 trees were coming down, I believe, to make room for the zigzag path. So do you know how many trees are coming down for this path, this design?
I believe it's the same, if not less. I don't have the exact number. It is actually, the greater count is over the full impact, which includes this path and also the placement of the stormwater system beyond. So there's a different number of removal and placement that's there. But we can have, I think it's a good point to have a diagram that shows what's existing, what was previous, and what's next, and we can definitely have that for you.
We'll share that with the planning department.
Okay. If no one else, I have another question on a different topic. So I think you mentioned that you've already done the studies on the traffic change impact.
We've done some preliminary stuff. That
Oh,
will
so
be
nothing-
submitted, yeah, preliminary, that will be submitted to planning in the next probably 60 days.
Oh, okay, because I was gonna ask, what the difference was where, in the new plan, number of anticipated employees that would be in the building compared to number of tenants that would have been in the residential existing
And-
design.
And the traffic engineer will lay that all out. But again, I sort of referred to what's going on at Links across the street, and we're seeing those lab tenants using a variety of different transportation options, and so the traffic for something like this tends to be a little different. The other thing that I would say, we are adding 55 or 54 additional parking spaces in that, underneath that building, to make sure that we are not putting too much pressure on the other retail parking uses and kind of keeping the lab people contained. So we think it really provides two benefits.
I might suggest that the number of trees before and after be sent to Ms. Libby Shaw, President of Trees for Watertown.
I will take that under, I will do that then.
Thank you.
Are there places to plant new trees?
There's there are places to plant new trees, and there's a requirement to have a certain amount and quantity and caliper size of trees in the placement. So in earlier plans, we've met and I think actually exceeded that amount. And I think this is still the same intent in this design.
Elodie, Lisa?
Thank you. I appreciate the design here is more creative than I feel that what you were showing before. What strikes me more is the use, and that it's very much, from what you've described so far, a private building. And I don't know, before when there were residents, it's a private residence, but you have more activation, people coming in and out. So when I see lobby, common space, but that's really for the employees, I'm guessing, and not, so what I'm looking for is more in that ground level, consideration for more public space, more interaction. And I wonder if you have worked with park designers, perhaps, in thinking about Arsenal Park, if you have more to say on
as
that.
I stated earlier, and Steve has been in fairly good contact with Danielle at CDM as the Arsenal Park project has progressed. So we are, as a direct abutter and a significant taxpayer here in town, we are extremely interested in how, not only how the park connects with the building here, but how the park connects with A, how the park connects with the River Green, how the park connects with F. So we are more than willing to continue to engage and have those discussions with the community. I think Bill wants to address the first part of your question.
Yeah, Lisa, if it was either a rental apartment building as residential or a condominium building, excuse me, as residential, the public would not be walking through the first floor of that building. The public will also not be walking through the first floor of this building as a lab building. It is exactly as you say, it's a private building. If you're a tenant, you're in, and if you're not a tenant, you're not in. It would be no different residential versus office, and I'd be fooling you to say otherwise. But I did want to talk a little bit about trees. But we have a lot of people who are concerned about trees. We're investing $500 and now heading to $600 million here. Trees are really important to us. Not because I'm a tree person, it's because our tenants are tree persons, because all of you are going to be our customers, because trees are incredibly important. The trees between the Home Depot parking lot for the last 20 years and Greeno Boulevard have been ignored and are horrible. They're a mess. The whole thing is a mess. I can guarantee you that some of my $600 million is going to improve those trees. Oh, I mean, it's the most certain thing that there is, that it's going to be 1,000 times better when we're finished than it is now. Now, you can't see it from here, and Andrew said, and a few people know, and Steve and Gideon know that, this is planned by us. We're being allowed to talk to CDM and the planning department, and that's been good, and it's sort of accelerating, I think, now, it's fair to say. And this is not a final by any means. Where the tennis courts stop and start is not, so this is, to use the Latin, this is the tabula rasa. So this is all to be determined, as is this. Now, these pathways are prescribed. Now, they've been altered a little bit, I'd say improved. But how we dot this, in particular to the issue of the landscaping. I was involved 5 years ago when we bought the property with the football team, the Watertown football team, in cleaning up some of this. Well, we did 1 day's worth of work. It's a mess. It's a mess again. We need to clean this up. We will clean this up. We need to plant more trees. We will plant more trees. I think we're going to be involved. Steve Magoon has his hand in my pocket about this park, and we're okay with that. What's that? Weekly.
It says way in.
Way in. Yeah. And
Both
you
pockets,
know what?
Steve.
It's fine.
Both pockets.
It's fine, because we're enormous beneficiaries of this park. If this was a C, we're not happy with that. If this is a B, we're not happy. We want this to be an A. And, you know, we're going to be financial contributors to the improvement of this, and we're not making the final decisions. The, you know, Conservation Commission and a bunch of concerned citizens are there. The last thing, I'm just sort of going back to the question, and Adam answered it, but I think if you can answer it a little more, pardon the pun, solidly. The north side of this building, your question about light here, again, we're very early in the design, but the north side of this building, which faces the other apartments, and other than from the Newton side and et cetera, it's going to be virtually solid. So you're not going to see a lot of windows there, because if you go back to the floor plan with the core, so yeah, well, let's go one more. We don't need windows, because we expect to have windows here, west, here, south, and here, east. And here's the core of the building with the men's and women's and the elevators and the stairs, et cetera. Back here, we expect these walls to be very solid. And we do that for two reasons, two very sort of complementary reasons. The folks who are outfitting lab and offices here, at some point in time, they need a solid wall. They don't want to be, you know, completely in the round on glass. And we're very respectful of the folks who are going to be renting apartments from us over here. They don't want to be looking into office people, and they don't want office people looking into them. So we really think that north side of this building is going to be quite solid.
And we're built so solid, it's not going to be a blank wall. It'll have pattern in it, it'll have material changes, and it might have some panels.
And yeah, I mean, we had this conversation the other day, but we're so early in all of this stuff. I think it's going to have some spandrel glass in it, which is glass, but it's going to be covered so you're not going to see it. You won't be able to see through it, but it will read like glass as you look at it, which makes it more interesting to look at. So that was too many answers, but keep going.
Jason?
Hi, thanks. So I want to just get back to a point somebody made earlier about the ground floor activation and, you know, what it might be used for. And yes, it's a private building, understand that, but I'm thinking of, like, I think it's the Broad Institute maybe in Kendall Square, where it's kind of like open. I think they have like a little museum in there or something like that. But I think a good sort of give back to the community is going to be hopefully to create some kind of space where the public can come in and kind of interact in that sense with the program at the building, with the science, and maybe it's an educational opportunity, but as a way to really, you know, get the, sort of bring the people from the park inside a little bit, not up above the first floor or beyond that area, but I think that would be really compelling, something to think about.
Okay, and again, we have to be respectful of those lab tenants and the safety and the security and the science, but that doesn't mean that we can't find and create some sort of opportunity that may end up, you know, being able to bring the public, you know, from outside in. I'll give Tom.
I think I'll save many of my comments for other public forums, but I'm curious. I was assuming that when this was a condominium building, that it would be shared amenities with building F, the pool and the like?
No.
So there's never, so this doesn't really change your plans for building F in any great degree?
Not in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you.
There's actually a big amenity component of the building, F over here, which is one of the ways we turn that masonry into this corner, just to respect that good point was used.
Steve?
Could you talk about the space between the two buildings at ground level? You didn't talk about that at all.
Sure. Do you want to talk about the, sure. So the space here, this is 24 feet. That was, you know, again, this building footprint is exactly where the previously approved master plan special permit building sat. Right now, we envision that this is both a pedestrian connection to the north side of that 24-foot wide. I mean, 24 feet wide is a two-lane street with sidewalks, and that this side of the building is back of the house and getting loading and things like that in off of the front of the street. We heard, I think, quite clearly when we were talking about lab in this building the concerns about loading and getting things in and out of the building, and I think Adam and his team have done a really good job of taking this small footprint and making it extremely efficient. We have asked these guys to study what that space looks like in sort of both in width and height, and how attractive or unattractive we make it for pedestrians. We think that we have done a much better job, Steve's plan here, in getting people from the Home Depot parking lot and into the park. We think that that's a vast improvement. But again, we're early in the design, and we will certainly have some things, I think, to show the community about what that space looks like. Yes?
Yeah. So my question is kind of along the lines of how the space is going to be marketed to biotechnology companies, because yes, the industry is growing, but it's also in this area volatile in the sense that everyone still always wants to be in Cambridge. So when someone outgrows a space in Cambridge, they'll move to the seaport, and when that space opens up, people will rush in from the surrounding areas, and it definitely, impacts freight landing, it impacts other businesses. So I was wondering if you have any sort of plans on how to market this more beyond just that exact intersection of Boston and Cambridge. If there's things you've heard from your tenants in links that they particularly like about Watertown, if you're concerned about retaining clients.
Yeah. Well, my favorite quote was from Armin Shirai, who's a 33 or 34-year-old CEO of Squeeze, and he's down the street and has been since I think they started the company 3 or 4 years ago at 134 Coolidge, which is just beyond the UPS parking lot there, and frankly a building that myself and another partner did 19 years ago as a lab conversion into a 40,000 square foot building. And Squeeze is in 20,000 square feet there. Armin Shirai, the CEO and founder of that company, said, I'm desperate to stay in Watertown. They'll kill me back at the office if I don't, their science is going great, and they've raised a bunch of additional dough, and they're working out of their cars, they have too many people, et cetera. He said, they'll kill me if I move out of Watertown. People, have been coming to that location for 3 or 4 years, and they don't want to move. And quite frankly, with what's going on here, with Arsenal Yards, with, you're gonna get 3 places to get coffee and 5 places to get food and a few places to get drinks and a grocery store and a blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. It just makes it that much more attractive. Right now at 134 Coolidge, he's in sort of a no man's land in terms of walkable amenities, but he'll be in the middle of it. So that's an example. I would tell you that Andy Phillips, the CEO of C4, who lives in Arlington and used to ride his bike from Arlington to Kendall Square. C4 has, 80 employees or something like that, Alejandro, yeah? 80 employees, ride his bike to Kendall Square from Arlington. He said, oh my God, it's such a pain in the neck to get into, that last mile, even on your bike in Kendall Square. I'm so happy to be riding my bike from Arlington to Watertown. I think we've got some very, very happy tenants at Lynx. 4 of them came from, none of them came from Watertown. 4 from Cambridge and 1 from just in Waltham over the line. I think that's going to grow. We didn't start it, as I think Andrew had on one of his slides. The history is the 24 lab tenants there. 23, yeah. 23 lab tenants, there's 500,000 square feet. Across the street, this building right here, 500 Arsenal, owned by Alexandria. That's been there for 15 years or something like that. I don't know how many tenants have cycled through there, but there's a lot of those tenants. And I think, Arsenal Yards is a real change for them, because quite frankly, with all due respect to this lovely mall that we bought 5.5 years ago, their choices for food was Chipotle and the food court. I mean, Ruby Tuesdays died 20 years ago. No one told them, right? They weren't there when we were there. I mean, when we bought it. So, we're bullish. Lynx turned out to be a huge success. We got lucky. You know, we were trying to lease it for creative office tenants for a while, and they said, you know, we were 0 for 60 with them, and then the lab guys came along, and we made one deal, and all of a sudden we made 2 deals, and all of a sudden there were 5 deals, and couldn't believe it. And the squeeze thing is more, and we're almost in a little bit of state of shock. And it's not like we don't lead some of these things, but we maybe listen more. And it's pretty loud that they, the lab community, wants more, and actually some smaller spaces. Because when we end up with these 16,000 foot footprints here, as Andrew or Adam had said, 1 tenants or 2, there's not a lot of those smaller spaces. You know, these are the guys who are 2 and 3 years old. Science has started to work. The venture funding has kicked in for level 2, or et cetera. So we're very bullish about our chances of success, and of bringing highly educated, well-paid folks. You know, younger, a lot younger than 63 years old, the typical employee coming into town. So we think it's a good thing.
Well, doesn't Bill look great for 63? Fantastic. So we've been at this. My client. So we've been at this innovation district game for about 12 years, and anybody who's trying to do this looks to 2 places in the world, not just the United States, in the world. Kendall Square is number 1. So there are cities all over the United States where we're working, and they're trying to create a mini version of Kendall Square. The other is University of California, San Francisco, UCSF, where they did a new innovation district just south of their baseball park. The 3rd most successful innovation district in the United States right now is in St. Louis, Missouri. It's called Cortex. And we did a plan there about 12 years ago, and it is just doing great. It's going great guns. But it was the reverse of this project, because the first thing the developers there, they created the life science space, they created the lab space, back office space, and they struggled to get 1 restaurant to show up, to get housing to show up, to get a hotel to show up. They finally are doing it now. So the fact that this is the reverse, because that's really the DNA that makes these things work, is great restaurants, great housing. It's not just the science, it's really this ecosystem idea. So the fact that all that stuff is already here, I think, I'll be shocked if this isn't a huge success in terms of attracting really high quality tenants.
Why are you ignoring Elodia? Why can't Elodia
Because
ask
he
a
wanted to give
question?
everybody a first turn.
She has to wait her turn.
I do, I get it.
Janet has a question. Great. And then Peter has a question.
I'll be last, it's okay.
Not so much a question, but I mean, answering somebody else's question about the other districts that are competing. Personally, I moved my business out of the Fort Point Innovation Seaport District when you couldn't park there anymore, and it's only worse now. So free parking here is just an amazing plus. We're also, in this next year, going to be completing the bike path that goes from next to Lynch to Alewife. And that bike path is going to be really a huge asset for moving the same people who are working at these lab spaces back and forth between points in Cambridge and Alewife. So I agree with you. I see it as a very the right place at the right time. And also wanted to comment on the idea about public access to the lobby, because I do think that that will be an important feature. And again, looking back to what was required in Seaport District early on was a lot of public access at the ground level, which, in a lot of cases meant free restrooms, but which is handy too. However, a lot of synergy happened between the artists there and the businesses there, and there are millions, just tons and tons of venues for the local artists to be showing. So I think that there is a lot that we should follow up on in terms of what that lobby space can look like.
Okay, thank you. Peter?
Thank you for the presentation. When it's all said and done in terms of residents, what do you project capacity for the amount of residents that we live in this area?
The number of, so we will, between the building F, building C, and building D, we'll have 302 rental apartments, 257, I'm doing the math in my head, market rate, and 45 affordable.
So in terms of numbers,
You know, if you said 1.5 people per apartment, 300 times 1.5, take off my shoes, 450.
Very good. Now, and I know it's under the care and custody of conservation and the hands of the planning department. In terms of the 12 feet, you have 12 feet, and there's that, you know, right now you got that angled wall. What would you recommend to get to the park? So you get the building, you get 12 feet. How are you gonna?
Are you talking about when you exit this building?
Yeah, you know,
Getting-
like right now, there's a grade change, there's a huge grade change.
Well, we're hoping
What are you hoping for?
We're hoping to eliminate that grade change.
How? I'm just
With-
looking.
With a bulldozer.
Well, yeah,
With a bulldozer.
And actually, Bill.
Everybody's fresh, I'm trying.
No, and that's, well.
I'm trying to get your thing, I hear the care and
No, no.
custody of planning, but I wanna get your, what would
Well,
you think would work?
and I think Steve has worked with Danielle
Right.
on that, because we don't want that to be a hard transition. We don't want it to be.
That's a really good question, but I think.
Thank you. Somebody appreciates my question, thank you.
There's adequate space in the park now to have that grade transition work from the proposed grades against these buildings back up into the park in a more nice fashion. What's there now is a reaction to the old mall, the park coming to an end, putting the granite riprap boulders down as a separation, chain link fence. It's just sort of dead end. This is intended to be a much more kind of smooth, bucolic green connection between that space and the other. Again, we don't have full control over that grading design, but in conversations with the town and with CDM Smith, there is the ability to have a more nice transition of green between those two spots. And again, like I said before, the direction of the design of the park as it exists now was done prior to the thought and development of a building like this, or the connection between there. So there's a new direction, if it's accepted, to see how those two things can work better.
Although I will say that we had every expectation, if this was a residential building, it would meet the same test, which is no wall. I mean, we will have failed, us and the planning department and conservation commission, if this isn't seamless. Thank you. Yeah.
Mark?
First of all, I want to thank you for your thoughtful design in going from residential to a different use. I appreciate you bringing in another very professional person on your team that knows how to do these things. That's really a wonderful thing for this community. I do think because we're not residential anymore, there is an opportunity, I believe, that we should look at, you should look at, in the lobby, at least having some space for community use, in particular at night, where maybe your labs have all gone home and there's some use of that space. So I do think I would appreciate consideration of at least a space that we could call maybe some community use. And I know it's difficult when you're trying to deal with tenants and so forth, but I'm hoping that in your consideration moving forward, that there's an opportunity to have a little bit of community space.
We do have community spaces throughout the property. They're called restaurants.
Yeah, but
You got the best view there, Bill, in the whole place.
some of us can't afford to go to those
Oh,
no. We've certainly heard the desire from the crowd. We will challenge the architect to kind of.
I'd just like to comment that it is very important, the connection between your building and the park. Being a senior citizen, I am too often in the Harvard Pilgrim buildings. When the nurses there find out I'm from Watertown, they tell me how great it is to have the park right next to them. They jog at lunchtime and take breaks. So it is very important, and I was very happy to hear how well you're going to do this.
Thank you. Chuck?
I'm just going to point out in trying to get some community space that several people have been talking about. A lot of people here, including myself, have probably never been in a lab building. So it'd be interesting to be able to at least go in and get some clue about what's going on, what kind of work is going on, why is this building so special, why is it all a lab building, et cetera. So it's a learning opportunity, I think, of some significance.
Well, and I think we have, and there's some people here in the room that have, either Bill or myself or Mark or Alejandro have brought over to Links, and we are quite proud of it, and we would be more than happy to.
No, I agree with that, and I had a great tour of Links with Bill. But Links is off the beaten track, so a lot of people in town don't even know it's there, actually. I mean, just don't know it's there.
Is that a
People
good thing
like
or a
talking.
bad thing?
Well, it's, you know, it's around the corner, so, and this is much more accessible.
Yes, oh, I understand. I understand your point. Yes. Does anyone else in the room have a question? And I'm not torturing Elodia, but believe me. But I figured we would end with Elodia, since it's almost 8 o'clock.
Okay,
Elodia, go ahead.
No, you can let Michelle go. I'll be the grand slam ending. I love that.
I'm sure you will be.
So I'm going back to Arsenal Park, and I have a question. I think it was like 2 years ago, Ms. McClellan distributed a document at a planning board meeting for the public that indicated $500,000 contribution to the park, and I was wondering, and I think that's changed since, because the topic has come up and we haven't gotten a straight answer. I'm glad to hear Steve has his hands in his pockets on that. But do we have any idea of what the contribution will be to the park?
That contribution will come when Mr. Lagoon makes his contribution to the park, and we understand what the costs of the parks and the final designs of the park are.
Will it be at least that 500,000 that was on that document that you had to pass
It
out
will
to
not
the
be
public?
at least that. It will be a function of what Steve's plan is, and what the final plan is, and what the town's contribution is.
Town doesn't have any money.
And neither do we.
Wait a minute, Bill,
There's
$400 million
There's 2
project.
bits of false news.
John?
Just a couple of comments. I looked at my phone. It's 0.9 of a mile from here to 46 Beechwood Ave, where I grew up. The whole thing about Greeno Boulevard, the graffiti that some of my friends probably put there in high school is still there. So to grow up here, to have this, just to look at it is a thing of beauty to these eyes. And I wish you a lot of success. I'm glad to know, Bill, I learned that you're 7 years older than me. I learned that, like me, you occasionally listen to your mother. When the town said no, you adapted. And I like the adaptation, and wish you well with the holiday.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? We really do want to end with Elodia. And I think Elodia wants us to end with Elodia.
One last suggestion. Towards the community space, it would be fantastic for the town in general if there could be science talks. So if people from the different companies in a space somewhere on Arsenal Yards had talks, and they could explain to the public, get people more familiar with the science, less freaked out by it, excited.
That's a great suggestion. Elodia, would you like to stand up?
Oh, yes. Okay, my ideas, because that is the best view. That whole lobby area is going to be the best view. So the Watertown Community Foundation should have their Christmas cocktail party there, because it'll be extraordinary. More than that, I think I should tell you, I think this is beautiful, and I think the new building is going to be fantastic. We need something modern, unusual, that'll really stand out for Watertown. I have a question, Alejandro, the wonderful ambassador of Goodwill over at Links, and he gives a phenomenal tour. So if none of you have gone to go to the Links building, get your butts over there. You're missing a wonderful opportunity. But I know that you're doing a great job with the transportation with the people in there, because I listened to him talk with a lot of the employees there. Are you going to loop that transportation bus bill through this project? Because I don't know anything about the TMA and all that jazz.
We're going to have a separate
bus
shuttle bus from here.
for that one. Okay, but I really should have led off with that. I think this project is going to be beautiful. I love the building. I think it adds a great deal of style to Watertown, which certainly I've been asking for a long time. Bring back the copper roof on the movie theater, the undulating roof. You'll really make me happy. And Adam, restaurant on the top of Building G, I would die and go to heaven, and you'll be rid of all my comments. It's a bonus. Thank you.
Thank you, Elodia.
And I'll see, are there any other comments? Because we certainly don't want to to cut anyone off. It is approaching 8 o'clock. We're more than happy to stay and answer any other questions. We thank you very much.
Thank you very
As I think most of you know, this is the first meeting. There's multiple processes. We won't be in front of the planning board for somewhere between 60 and 90 days, I think, because our plans, we can't begin that formal submittal process until we've advanced some plans. And while you could probably tell that we didn't quite know everything we were talking about today, it's a function that we've been talking about this for only a couple of months, and we need to advance the plans before we submit it. So it will be months. It will be late into the spring before we would have final approvals. We would not be able to start construction on this building, because even if we had those final approvals in, let's say, May, until later than this time in 2020. It'd be probably March or April of 2020 to start construction on a 2-year process. So just to give you, because we usually get that question about timing, start and finish, et cetera, but it's sort of like 2020, Q1, maybe Q2, to that same time, almost 2 years later. It's probably 18 months to build our building and 6 months for tenants to do their work inside that building. And in 2022 would be, sounds like a long time from now, but we all remember 2000 and 2010, which is now a long time ago. We would be finishing the C and D apartment buildings in the late summer of 2021.
We're hoping for June of 2021, but yes, starting C and D in June of 2019 when the B garage is done.
And again, Andrew ran through it a little quickly, but we're talking about the mess that we've been creating out here for 6 or 8 months. First tenants here will open late this year, hopefully November. Cinema, a couple of restaurants. Actually, the first tenant would be Chipotle, etc. Opposite Marshall's in the first floor, lower level of that garage. But it's sort of November of 19, then another wave in the spring of 20, then another wave in the fall of 20, then spring/summer of 21. So it's constantly evolving and a lot of work going on. So thanks very much.